Captain's log, stardate 46358.2. The Enterprise is on course for a rendezvous with the Cardassian ship Reclaw. Fortunately, I still have time to prepare the ship and crew for the task ahead. Welcome, Starfleet stands, lizard lovers, and podcast pals, to a special finale epilogue of our Bajoran and notably Cardassian-themed run of hit or miss Star Trek. I am your regular host and captain of this ramshackle vessel, Mike Wilson, and this one promises to be a doozy. How could we possibly wrap things up without tackling the Cardassian story, the legendary Next Generation two-parter, Chain of Command? Drawn by the reputation of this truly impactful episode, I've assembled a fine command crew for the mission ahead. First up, she's probably sick of me after appearing on 3 straight episodes of our sister show, Silver Screen Podcast. It's our Sci-Fi Queen, Nita. Welcome.
Thank you for having me back, and I'm not sick of you yet.
Well, there's time. We have another podcast, Silver Screen Podcast, to record in a week. So comes back again. So we'll see how we go. But are you glad to be back in Talking Trek at least this time?
Yes, let's get it done.
Awesome. We kind of already have been starting talking about it off air. We had to stop ourselves because we were getting into it. So yeah, but, with lots to say, I'm sure. And finally, a guest we haven't seen in far too long, but a one-time regular. It's the triumphant return of the one, the only Rick Everson. Welcome back.
Hello, thank you. Very glad to be back. Wanted to come back for some time because I need to suggest that you go to a 4-shift rotation.
I mean, look, Rick, I'm going to implement it, but the truth is it's going to cause so many problems. It's not something I can just jump into. It's going to take a while.
Listen, get it done, buddy. Just get it done.
Yeah. Speaking of which, we'll be talking about the challenges of working under a pain-in-the-ass new boss and the struggle of counting lights shortly. But first, as always, we're going to begin by opening those hailing frequencies. Yes, it's time for hailing frequencies open.
Hailing frequencies open, sir.
So, I mean, I know you guys have been on before, so I've definitely discussed the big questions about how you got into Star Trek, your favorite characters, and all of that stuff. But this is definitely your first appearance this season, Rick. So I have to ask you the big kind of outstanding question, which is, do you have any favorite or outstanding Bajoran or Cardassian episodes, story arcs, characters that you wanted to shout out?
I mean, to be fair, we're literally going to talk about my favorite Cardassian episode, I think. So it is Chain of Command, so it's a pretty apt one for me to be on. Cool. Outside of that, I'd pretty much run DS9 from episode 1 to the end. So there's
anything in particular that anything particular episode wise that stands out from DS9, or just all of it?
I was kind of like, DS9 is great because I kind of initially I was a bit like not sure about this whole Bajoran thing, but by the end of it I was absolutely sold. And when I think probably one of my favorite is when it's Covenant, when we have the fun of the Bajoran religion, but Descartes has usurped it and made a Par-Wraith cult. So you have a little bit of a combination, one Cardassian Bajoran going, and obviously we have another Cardassian Bajoran combination later on, because like many cult leaders, he's not that great a person.
Indeed. So yeah, that's fair enough. Do you have any favorite characters that would be Bajoran or Cardassian?
Major Kira Nerys, absolutely one of my all-time favorite Bajorans. Awesome. And I'm not sure I have a favorite Cardassian because by and large I dislike them, but in a way that's the great thing about.
Don't tell Lady Vian.
But so many of the characters are great because they are villainous that you do love to hate. Descartes, Madred, as maybe Damar, because he does sort of turn around in the end. He has a bit of a redemption arc, although he was a truly horrible man at some points before then, wasn't he?
Yeah. The actor's not great, and I don't think I could ever forgive him for killing Zial, but otherwise, I kind of see where you're coming from.
Yeah, that was just unnecessary. The way she died. Yeah, that was deep.
I see what you said. I thought most people tend to have a soft spot for Garak, to be honest, because he's kind of not as evil and he's interesting. So, fair enough. Well, yeah, with that logged and filed, then it's time to move on one last time this series to the segment that gives the podcast its name. It's the hit or miss section.
What about my performance?
I'm not a drama critic.
So, yeah. So I'm not going to have too long on this episode because we've got a big 2-part episode to talk about, but I did have to do one last one. And as has been the case all season, we are going to mix in Bajoran and Cardassian things, but not exclusively that, just because it's nice to have a little bit of that reference, but I don't want it to overwhelm. I have 6 last things down, but as I've been doing all season, I'm going to do this kind of lottery style. And I'm going to ask you guys to pick a number each. I'll maybe do that twice, and then we can get 4 of these logged and get going. Hopefully, we'll find some good answers. So, Rick, you're the newest guest. Did you want to pick a number between 1 and 6 for our first one?
Okay, 5.
Okay, number 5 is a Bajoran character. One we bizarrely haven't discussed yet, but I'm surprised we haven't. So, sorry about the small picture, but hit or miss for the character of Kai Wynn. As played by the late, great Louise Fletcher. And again, we'll start with you, Rick, since you picked the number.
So, as I was just saying about the Cardassians, you know, you get the villains that you just love so much because they're so villainous. She's an absolute hit because she is so awful. But it's a delight to see her. It's a delight to see the reactions of people, the way they interact with her, her maddening, calm, my child demeanor. It's literally. And then when you get to the final 10 episode arc and you realize, you know, it's been building, so nothing's out of character. Her desire to, you know, her fury that the prophets have favored a non-Bajoran over her all these years. Finally, the point where she goes to the Par-Wraiths, she gets in bed with Descartes, literally, and it's incredible.
Yeah, and a great performance, I think, as well. Yeah. It's weird how like the whole idea of the whole Karen thing didn't exist in DS9, but it's just become such a meme since. The whole sort of my child intensifies.
Yes,
memes that you see around. But
yes,
that's fair enough. What about you then, Nita? Hit or miss and reasons why?
Oh, you know, I hated her character, right? But this actress did such a phenomenal job to get people to hate this character, but want more of her. Because every time she came onto DS9, you knew something was about to blow up. Something was going to happen. Her attitude was going to be that whole, bless your heart, I'm not really insulting you mentality. Because every time she said something, there was such condescension behind it, such double meaning. Like when Kira was at the monastery and she goes to Baral, oh, it's so nice for you to have entertainment. Really? What are you saying about this woman? Like, hello, she's standing right there. And she was saying, I'm so glad you can stay here for a week. Like, you need to leave. Like, just say you need to leave. Like, be direct. She was not. And she knew how to play her cards. And that whole, my child was really, listen, I'm better than you attitude. And it's toughest attitude to fight because there's, again, nothing direct going on. It's all kind of indirect, and it can be interpreted so many different ways, but we all know what she meant, you know. And she got people to hate her and want to see more of her. This actress is phenomenal. I am not a fan of the character, so ew on the character, but I gotta talk about that actress. She is phenomenal. She deserved an award for that part.
Yeah. No, that's not going to be any disagreement from me, so it's going to be fairly boring if anyone was looking for a fight, because it's a hit for me, the character as well, because again, it's the character you love to hate, but just so well played. I mean, as soon as you find out they've cast, Nurse Ratched from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, you're like, oh, this girl can play a really woman that I hate incredibly well, and in that case, so... But she was more complicated than that as well. Like, you knew she was doing wrong stuff, but it was always just on the right side of getting away with it, if you know what I mean. It was always just within the realm of like, oh, I'm not doing anything too bad, am I? And so you never really noticed, like, you knew her motivations were for power, but never really fully like 100%. And in this day and age, it was quite a nice thing to have that subtlety. Back in the day when politicians, not that that's what she is, but they used to be, if they were being nasty and underhanded, they'd try and keep it on the down low at least. So it was
exactly. Exactly. Like when she went to ask for Kira's help to get the soil reclamators back, she goes, "Oh, did you have a recent loss? Are you mourning the prime minister?" No. She knew who she was mourning. She absolutely did. She was just pouring salt on the wound because that's who she is. And then turns around and asks for a favor. Really?
Yeah.
Someone needs to slap her. Just someone needs to slap her. Like she's the kind of character you just want to slap across the face. Or is that just
but me? I do think, like I said, there was a bit more interest in there, because you did wonder sometimes if she was it just her, or was she acting in the interests of her planet, so to speak? And then, as you said, Rick, when you get to the last arc and it's like, oh, she doesn't care. She's literally allying with, the representation of evil, because she's just so hurt that the good guys won't, respond to her. And
she's
the
power
beautiful
hungry.
writing, the writing she's of the tragedy of like literally this getting in with Ducat, her most hated enemy, just because, and then realizing from that like what she's become, and finally having that last turnaround. I think it's just chef's kiss writing, one of the better parts of the finale for me. So I mean, and just like I said, Louise Fletcher, just such a good actress. She could play that edge just really well. So that's very boring, just hate from all three of us. So Nita, did you want to pick a number between 1 and 6, except 5?
Except 5, okay. You know what? You know what? I'm gonna pick number 1.
Okay, number 1 is also Bajoran related, in part. It is an episode of Next Gen, weirdly enough, since we're discussing that, and it is the episode The Next Phase. Do you need a reminder on what that episode's about, Nita, or?
Give me a second. The Next Phase.
I
know that one. I know that. That was when they thought they were dead, but they weren't.
Yes. I'll just give a quick synopsis for the audience in case you haven't, in case you're not familiar with titles. It's basically the one where Geordi and Ro are transported and believe themselves to have died, but they have been intercepted by a Romulan attempt at a sort of phase device of some kind. So they're out of phase with the Enterprise, and hijinks ensue, let's say. So Nita, hit or miss, and why?
I thought this episode was really good because it explored both afterlife and science, and not being dead but being dead, right? Because everyone thought they were dead, and you kind of got to see your memorial, so to speak, and in the fight to survive and be seen. I thought that was really, really, really well written and interwoven very well into these characters. And I mean, as far as I'm concerned, LeVar Burton can do no wrong. He is phenomenal. He's a phenomenal actor. And I think he really shined in this episode because it wasn't about his abilities as an engineer, but just as a human being and trying to figure out how to interact, how to survive. And I think her skill set, being a Bajoran who had to survive the occupation, who had to fight her whole life, really gave her a sense of, I'm done. Like, I felt like she felt like, I can't fight anymore. And here he is pushing you to fight, pushing her to keep going. And it really gives that dynamic of even the strongest comes to a point where you just have to, you get that I need to let go feeling. right?
Yeah.
And it really gave her a softer appearance, because she does come across in TNG really rough and tough, understandably so. But it gave her this softness that we really don't truly get to see until Picard, Star Trek Picard.
Yeah.
So yeah, I this is definitely a thumbs up for me episode. Love it.
That's awesome. You've basically said literally word for word exactly the kind of things I would say, so it'll be boring when we get
Because
to my
we are
section.
one. We are one, like the Borg.
You couldn't have at least made it a Vulcan mind melt? I don't want to be a Borg.
I want to be the Borg queen.
You would. Anyway, moving on. What about you, Rick? Are you familiar with this episode, and what were your thoughts on it?
So this episode has two very strong things going for it. Geordie LaForge is basically one of the front and center characters of this episode, and you get to the end of it and think, oh, that was a Geordie episode where he wasn't a bit weird and creepy with a woman. Love it. Because LeVar Burton is such a lovely, wonderful man, and the amount of storylines that you look back on and think, Geordie's a bit creepy. And
He is creepy.
It's
With
horrible.
women.
Yeah, it's horrible to think of Paul LeVar having to play that. So,
Yeah.
but also, it's just an immensely fun episode, and it does feature one of the things I really, really, really love, which is the Ro-Riker dynamic that is so endlessly entertaining to me. And in this one, it's like, and you never know what he was going to say, and you know that probably niggles at her forever. And I actually would have loved it when her appearance in Picard. If before she left, she was a bit like, "What were you going to say at my memorial, by the way?" But yeah, I just love it. Yeah. It's a fantastic episode. It's also got a crazy sci-fi premise that, if you look too closely, doesn't really hold up. But it doesn't matter because it's TV and it's okay to be a bit silly, and they lean into it and go for it. So all fun.
Yeah, I mean, like anything to do with these kind of things, you've got to question how they're able to stand on, the floor. But that's true of so many different sci-fi concepts. I mean, why does the holographic doctor not just fall through, But you just like you see your hand waving away. There'll be a reason, some kind of intrinsic field or whatever gubbins they say this week. But yeah, I agree with everything you guys said. It was nice that it showed that softer side of Ro, that she finally thought she was at rest and that she leaned into the spiritual, while Geordie just refused to acknowledge that there was anything other than scientific that was going on. There was definitely a rational explanation, and so it was great seeing those two play off each other, because it was kind of pairing that we hadn't really seen, and Geordie had been really kind of harsh to her at first when she came on board, so it was nice that they got that development. And then, as you said, they could see what everybody else was thinking and saying about them when they didn't think they were there. Yeah. There's a really couple of cool scenes that I wanted to mention that stand out. The first being when Ro is kind of annoyed with Riker and realizes she won't hear what he said, and they're kind of firing their phased phasers so that it gets a sort of discrepancy that they can read or whatever, and she just fires straight through Riker's head because she's so annoyed. And the second one was one of the most creepy moments in Star Trek that really got me, because I was probably like a teenager when I saw it, and it's when you know that they're phased and everybody else is moving differently, and then you just see a Romulan behind them standing still, then he moves and follows them, and you're like, oh shit, that guy's out of phase too, he sees you, kind of thing.
That's a beautiful moment, isn't it? It's just so like, that guy's watching them, he knows.
Yeah, exactly.
Can I just say he totally tricked me? I did not expect that. When the very first time I saw this episode, I said, and I just thought it was them too. And then when they revealed that the Romulan was also out of phase, I was like, oh, he tricked me. And leave it to a Romulan to try to murder you instead of working with you to get unphased. Really, Romulans? You cannot be that secretive of a race and that distrustful that when you know cooperation will get you out of this circumstance, you prefer to fight. Like,
he doesn't want them learning that they did it. So, just a great sci-fi-ish plot on that aspect, but also great character stuff, and I think it's a great episode as well. So once again, very boring, 3 hits. So we're back to you then, Rick. Did you want to pick another number between 1 and 6, except obviously 105?
Let's go for a classic 2.
Number 2 is not Bajoran or Cardassian related, but it is a ship. So I'm very happy because I like to chuck ships in every now and then. But we're getting to, come to somewhat obscure ones because I think we've covered basically quite a lot of them. So I hope you guys are up to date with Strange New Worlds-ish. Well, that's episode 1. But hit or miss for the USS Archer. And it's on screen if you happen to be watching on YouTube or if you're with us here. And Rick, you're up first.
You give me a tricky one here because we get very little of the Archer apart from this visual. So, I mean, it looks pretty plain, to be honest. It doesn't strike me. It's got like a tiny crew.
Crew of 4 or something ludicrous like that, isn't it?
I mean, guys, just send a shuttle if that's the amount of people you're sending.
Just send a shuttle. You did not to say that. That's hilarious.
And I don't normally get hung up on technical bits or, Roddenberry said this, so this must be canon. But there's just something, it appeals to me about 2 or 4 even number nacelles. And there's got one. Okay. And there's a part of my little Star Trek obsessed mind that goes, oh, how does that create a stable warp field for just the 1 nacelle? That doesn't make a lot of sense.
Well, if you watch the last episode of Lower Decks, it does explain it in detail.
Well, yes. Yeah. But I hadn't watched the last episode when this first came on, so I'm just and because it was such a fleeting appearance, I've got very little to go on. So I don't want to say it's a miss because there's nothing wrong with it per se. It's just very briefly there. So call it a miss because it's a kind of a bit of a nothing footnote, really.
Okay. By any chance, have you seen the Master Replicas model of it?
No, I'm very behind on the model races.
In the model form when you can see it. The prices are stupid. I don't own it, but I've seen the model and it looks a bit better when you can actually kind of explore it a bit more. In the episode Strange New Worlds, but fair enough. Okay, so I'm gathering kind of light hit / middle of the road from you.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Nita, what about you?
I like it. I like that it's small and that you don't need a big crew to man it. I think for exploratory reasons, it might be good, take it to explore Nebula, hang out. Let me go visit my cousin in another planet. I'll take that, starship. Is it really functional in wartime or for a deep space mission? Probably not, but I think it does the job, taking supplies. I think it's not a bad ship. It just doesn't have the functionalities that a bigger ship would need to have.
Yeah. Okay. So where are you coming down on that?
No. I think I like it. I like the ship.
Okay.
I think it works for what it can do. It works great. Now, if you're going to try to create, you can't put it in the same category as even a Constitution class. But I think that it has its function within Starfleet, within space travel. I think there's nothing wrong with it. Visually, I think I like the different kind of look, 1 nacelle type thing.
Yeah.
Because again, I don't think it needs the power of 2 nacelles.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it is actually based on sort of designs that existed in what they call beta canon and stuff as well. So that's what I kind of like. It's like fans will know what I mean, but it's basically like a Hermes class or a Saladin class that existed back in the day. And so I like that it calls back to that. And I actually quite like the design. Like I said, it looks better when you see it in kind of the model form because you can see where the deflector is, and it's kind of it is there, but it's hanging I think loosely off the saucer section somewhere, and the whole thing kind of looks a little bit better in that regard. All the issues I have with the ship basically aren't the ship or its designer's fault. It's in the script because I think it is ludicrous that there's a crew of 4 on any starship because at that point you would send a shuttle or something, and the idea that because there's only 4 of them, they just all beam down to the planet and abandon the ship without anybody on board it is so stupid.
It is stupid. That was kind of dumb. Have a 5th guy there just to stay behind. And beam people back.
Guy at least up there,
A medic. And leave a doctor up there. Because every ship needs a doctor. Even a holographic one. Something.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind that it's. I don't mind that it's a little bit smaller because there would be, and if it is smaller and it's intended for missions that smaller ships would go on, like your burst class and stuff, fair enough. But it would still need a crew of more than 4. I mean, that was just silly.
Yeah,
it's not the ship's fault.
And actually, I think what irks me about it, and it's not the ship's fault, but maybe there's a bit of like guilt by association for it there, is I think Una's far more sensible than to have gone on a mission where she would have left her, taken all 4 people down and that was it, and left the ship just floating there.
Yeah,
and not just leaving the ship floating, leaving it floating in orbit of a planet that is pre-warp. So you're literally like,
she didn't even hide it. I never understood that. Put it behind the moon, the dark side of a moon, something. Why are you leaving it in plain view of other starships to come or other alien ships to come and go? Oh, an abandoned ship. I'm calling dibs. I mean, you really shouldn't do that.
Not just that, any alien with a good telescope can probably see it and be like, hang on, what's that?
Yeah, exactly. We have telescopes that can see our moon. Why wouldn't an alien race have the same? Like, really?
Anyway, but yeah, I mean, I still say hit for the ship design, and I think that's basically where we come down on a soft hit overall. So yeah, final one for today then, and final one for this series of the Cardassian and Bajorans. And Nita, it's up to you to pick a number. You can either pick 3, 4, or 6.
6. Let's do this.
Okay, so yeah, number 6 is pretty big. It is related to Cardassians, and it is an episode of DS9. So hit or miss for the episode called The Wire. And again, just briefly off this. This is the episode where Arak is dying, and it is learned that it's because he is relying on a device that he was given to be able to resist torture, but that basically releases pleasant emotions into him because he finds it too difficult living in exile, and they have to try and find a way to save his life and deal with that. So, Nita, with that...
this is a total hit, a 100% hit. Love this episode. It explores Garrett's... natural side, I like to call it, because we see this up to this point, this jovial, I can handle exile, I can handle this, I can handle working and serving the Bajorans with my tailor shop, even though I was part of the Obsidian Order and did all sorts of horrible things. This is serious, like what he's going through emotionally, what he's going through physically. It's really telling of the power and the destruction that the Cardassians have. Because to say, look, I'm going to put this in you so that you can resist torture, and that's deep. Like, you really got to be like a super spy for that. Like, that's spying next level. And I love this episode because it also solidifies the friendship between Bashir and Gareth. It really brings them together. Like, it wasn't just lunches. It wasn't just Gareth teaching him how to see the world in this spy mentality and this Obsidian Order Cardassian way of looking at things, and opening Bashir's innocence, in a sense, to this part of the universe. But it also solidified that they were friends, whether they admitted it or not. They had a friendship, a bond that had been created through these lunches. And he genuinely cared, not just because this is his patient, but he cared because this was his friend that was suffering. A doctor isn't going to go all the way to Cardassia and face the head of, the retired head of the Obsidian Order for the schematics of this device for just a patient. It doesn't seem logical. That's why I feel like it was about their friendship as well as about what Garrett was going through. It showed a bravery of Bashir to do that. That was brave. He could have got himself killed. Hands down, could have gotten himself killed, and there's nothing anybody could have done about it, because they could have said, listen, he came to me, I was defending myself. They could have played it out in any way to defend the fact that they murdered a Starfleet doctor, but he was brave. and brazen and direct. And it showed this mature strength of Bashir that was really telling about the growth he had been doing while being at Deep Space Nine. It definitely a hit for me. I love this episode. It's not just sci-fi, it's psychological, and it's beautiful.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, completely. I gathered it was a hit because you had a lot of thoughts on it.
I'm so sorry.
Good, it's all good. So what about you, Rick? Can you remember this episode well enough? And do you think it was?
It's a definite hit. As soon as you said it, I'm like, brilliant, because I know everyone's going to be banging on about how great Garak is and what this adds to Garak. But I'm going to jump in a minute and be like, what does this do for Bashir? And you've gone and stomped all over that.
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
But I did pick it.
You did, and you know what? You brought more passion to it than I would have, I think. But yeah, absolute hit. This episode is incredible. It's such a great topic, so well dealt with. It's a terrifying notion that we could be in a situation where people would put these sort of devices in their heads to be more effective spies and agents like that. And it's a very Star Trek thing that we have the naive young doctor who's like been bumbling around for a year and a half, being all sort of like, he's confronted with this very dark thing, this very dark truth, but he steps up and he handles it so well. So it's fantastic episode all around.
Yeah, I just want to second everything everyone said. So that's going to be a really boring, complete hits for everything on the hit or miss section, because I agree with everything you guys said. It was a great character study. It was a brilliant psychological thing. It was an excellent kind of metaphor in the way that Star Trek does it, because you could also read it as like, my life's too hard, so I've become addicted to drugs, or any number of things, which obviously are represented by this cortical implant that releases good positive dopamines or whatever. It's the same kind of basic idea. I think it really absolutely hit and well acted. And again, it was one of the episodes early on that cemented that Garak and Bashir had a chemistry, whatever you kind of read that as. A lot of people read it, as a relationship. Fair enough. Lower Decks would canonize that later, but either way, it's just so well played by the two actors, and just such a sad revelation at the end of the episode of like, this implant was on at all times because I just can't bear living in this situation. And I kind of wish we'd explain a little bit more of that with Garak, explored it a bit more and how he kind of came to terms with it, but what we had was great, and the episode was fantastic. So that's going to be literally everything is a hit. Sorry, audience, if you're wanting a little bit of a conflict, but you never know. We might disagree about chain of command, which conveniently is what we're heading into now. So
let's see.
Let's discuss this two-part episode of TNG then. So we're dealing with the chain of command, and we're going to dive straight in to the analysis. We'll begin our analysis of it. And we will start, as always, with my poetry corner, because I have been doing it for the last 2 seasons. Rick, this may be all new to you if you haven't listened to the episode. So, my apologies if it's an embarrassing situation for me, but I have been doing it with ultimate respect and credit to the Delta Flyers, because it's an idea I copied from them, but then ran with because I enjoy doing it. So they always do a limerick and a haiku to explain the plot of the episode, and I started doing the same thing. I never asked the guests to do it, but if you ever wanted to, you're more than welcome. I'm going to dive in and do both, because I'll forget otherwise. I used to do one and then one at the end of the episode, but I was constantly forgetting it. So I'm going to start with the haiku, because it's a little bit more, standard. And so my haiku to explain chain of command is as follows. Picard is replaced, dangerous mission gets tense, and there are 4 lights. That basically fulfills all the functions of a haiku and gets the episode across. And now I'm going to move into my limerick, which hopefully will give you a little bit of a chuckle at the very least. And it is as follows. Starfleet's in over their head, and there's a guy that Picard should mad dread. Jellicoe's a jerk, that asshole boss from work, Riker should be in command instead. If you guys are happy, then I'm going to jump straight in with the behind-the-scenes section, first of all, explaining all the BTS, because there's a lot about chain of command. And again, feel free if you want to chime in on any thoughts on anything or any kind of questions you might have. So chain of command was originally intended to be a single episode, with Picard rescued at the end of the hour. Michael Piller suggested to split the story into 2 parts, primarily for financial rather than dramatic reasons. Jerry Taylor recalled, "We were in budget trouble, and Michael said, I think that what we could do is make this a 2-parter, have Picard captured, and then make it an episode about his relationship with his torturer that takes place in one room. It's a fascinating 2-person play, and we'll get another episode out of it that way, and we'll save a lot of money that will bring us even with the budget." So, yeah, unbelievable to think that was almost not there. A scene that pays homage to the novel 1984 is noted for a contest of wills between Picard and Madred about the perception of reality under coercion, seeing 4 Lights versus 5. I'm sure if you know the episode, you know that. Both episodes were the last of the Next Generation to air before the spin-off Deep Space Nine premiered in January 1993. As such, Chain of Command revisits the Cardassian political situation leading into Deep Space Nine, where the species plays a crucial role. Indeed, it's first referenced here that they have withdrawn from the Bajoran sector, and it's the first time audiences saw the new and going forward regular Cardassian military uniforms. Although their first filmed appearance was the DS9 pilot Emissary, this 2-parter actually aired first. On that subject, Damon Solok from this episode was originally intended to be Quark in a crossover with Deep Space Nine. The decision to show Emissary in January 93 meant that this was changed, as people wouldn't be aware of who Quark actually was, which again I found fascinating. I had no idea that was how it was intended to be. This is a kind of a big thing that, again, people note of the episode. Troy began wearing a standard Starfleet uniform in this episode when ordered to do so by Jellicoe. She had not done so since Encounter at Farpoint, with the exception of the fantasy universe portrayed in Future Imperfect. This was a costume experiment that Ronald D. Moore had wanted to try, and Marina Sirtis was eager to oblige. Ronnie Cox noted, "I think there were a lot of things that Jellicoe did that were really important for that show. Having Troy put on a damn uniform, give me a break. This is an officer on a ship and she's running around with her boobs hanging out. Ouch." Troy continued to appear in uniform while on duty for nearly all of the rest of the series and, of course, the movies. So, the character of Edward Jellicoe, who was introduced in this episode, would return as a recurring character in Star Trek Prodigy, where he's become a high-ranking Starfleet admiral. Jellicoe's ship, the USS Cairo, would be reported destroyed in the DS9 episode In the Pale Moonlight. In the Prodigy episode The Fast and the Curious, the wreckage is found by the Medusan Zero on a planet in the Delta Quadrant. Captain Jellicoe was ranked as the 68th most important character of Starfleet within the Star Trek sci-fi universe by Wired. The Gamer ranked Captain Jellicoe as the 14th best captain of Star Trek. Oof. Don't know if I agree with that, but we'll get into it, I'm sure. The producers attempted to establish Jellicoe as more of a by-the-book captain than Picard by means of various subtle details. His entry onto the bridge is announced, Captain on the Bridge style. He himself announces Picard's return at the end of Part 2. He also insists on crew members appearing in full standard uniform when on duty, as we said, and he has Data change to a Command Division Red uniform when he's promoted temporarily to First Officer. His catchphrase, "Get it done," when issuing orders, was intended to be a counterpart to Picard's somewhat friendlier "Make it so." He was also a family man, with reference to his kind of pictures that were drawn by his son. The writers wished to stress that Jellicoe wasn't at all ineffective as a captain, despite his run-ins with Riker. His approach was just more direct than Picard's. So, again, I'm sure we have thoughts on that, Nita. I know you've mentioned something already. So we'll get into that.
I can't wait to put my feet in it.
But I just have a couple of more things to say first. First of all, I had to share this really funny story. In 2012, Michael Dorn related a story about the production of this episode to the cast of Next Gen at the Calgary Expo. During shooting, while he, Patrick Stewart, and Gates McFadden were working in the tunnels of the Keltras 3 set at Paramount Stage 16, Dorn and Stewart started laughing uncontrollably. There were many stray cats roaming around Paramount Pictures, and as the set was covered with sand, they frequently used it for cat litter. Dawn asked Stewart what he was laughing about, and Patrick Stewart said, "I don't know how I got here. I was at a seminar at Santa Barbara. The next thing I know, I'm crawling around in cat shit."
That would be something Patrick Stewart would say.
Yeah, pretty funny. And there's a couple of small errors in this episode, which, being a nerd, I have to point out. First of all, the episode marks the first appearance of Admiral Alina Nechayev. She would go on to appear in 3 more episodes of Next Gen and 2 episodes of DS9. I think we've actually looked at one of her other appearances earlier this season. During the entire time she's on the Enterprise D, Admiral Nechayev is not shown wearing a comm badge. But once she's back in her office and contacted via subspace radio by Jellicoe, she is wearing one.
Yes, I noticed that.
And although the shuttle that Picard, Crusher, and Worf use is a Type 7 shuttle, the set used for the interior is that of a Type 6. again, oops, miscommunication between departments there. Not a huge deal, I'm sure, but yeah. So any thoughts, guys, on any of the behind the scenes stuff there? Was anything that stood out?
Go ahead, Rick. Sorry.
I always like that it was originally a 1-episode thing, because I think it's you wouldn't know. I think they've expanded the story so well. Although there is a fairly clear divide that part 1 is all the lead in, and part 2 is like, let's get into the really grim thing of torture. So, but I always thought that was a really interesting thing. That basically it went from being a really expensive episode to actually being quite a cheap 2 episodes. But it just because it's so well done, it's so good. It just goes to show that when you're looking to save money, the creativity can go up and come out with a bit of a masterpiece.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely. And I just had no idea, by the way, that it was only ever intended as 1 episode initially. But you are right. Once you know that, you can kind of see, because the bulk of part 2 is just the torture scenes. So, yeah, I get that's probably what was written to, I wouldn't say pad it out, but certainly to give you that second part. But yeah, it works. It's incredible. It's the highlight of the episode and the thing it's famous for. So you can't really say it was, it was a bad idea. What about you, Nita? Anything stand out for you, Florrie, from that?
Yeah, I absolutely loved both parts. I think this episode was fantastic. I like that they made it into 2. I'm not a huge fan of that because it makes me crazy that I gotta wait for the second part to find out what conclusion they're gonna come with, and I'm impatient. But this was well done, very, very well done. I felt like they did 2 stories, but within the same theme, and made it into 2 episodes. And I really like that about that. Like the first half was about, the Enterprise and the crew and what they were doing, and what they were going through. And then the second part was focused mostly on what Picard was going through. I like that about the way they divided the episode up.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, as I said, it ends up that it works really well, and it doesn't seem as kind of cut into, just pieced together from 2 bits, because that ongoing arc, I think, is enough that's going on, and it is spread enough across the kind of 2 episodes. So you have got the Jellicoe thing still going on in the, as the kind of B plot for part 2 and the A plot for part 1, I guess, in a lot of ways. But yeah, I did like it, and I did appreciate the little funny story about crawling in cat litter as well.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. So I always go around and ask this as well. So can you remember, Rick, the very first time you saw this episode and what your initial impressions coming away from it that first time were?
Now, I think the first time I saw this episode was when I'd got the VHS tape. Showing my age here, but because in the UK we had very limited access to Star Trek. Once we'd got to Best of Both Worlds, it disappeared unless you had Sky, which I didn't. So I was picking random episodes if I bought the tapes, and this is one I did pick up, and it was in 1, so I got to see both parts. And oh my word, yeah, I remember being absolutely blown away by it. This was some serious. And I think I might have seen the DS9 pilot beforehand.
Right.
So it made a lot of sense, obviously, in terms of that, because it ties directly in. But yeah, I just thought it was incredible, because you get a whole episode of 2 absolutely incredible actors in a room together, just going for it.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I always remember being blown away that what was largely just two guys talking was so incredible, so dramatic, and so tense.
Yeah, I can't disagree at all. Actually, I'll get to my thoughts in a second. But what about you, Nita? Can you recall the very first time you saw it and your first impressions?
Oh, yes, when it first came out. So I was annoyed I had to wait for the following week for the second part. Okay, I am impatient. Okay, did I mention that? But no, I thought it was fantastic. And it's interesting how my first impressions of that first episode and the characters, and the second episode and the characters there has evolved since my first time watching it. But yeah, when Admiral Nashe says, "I'm here to relieve you of command of the Enterprise," I had the same face he put on. Like, what? What in the ending of Star Trek TNG just happened? Because I thought it was over with. I was like, we waited so long for another Star Trek, and this is how they're going to end? No, this can't be. Because once you remove Captain Picard, unless you're promoting Riker and doing some sort of weird thing, it didn't make any sense.
Yeah, they almost did that, by the way, just out of, just as a little aside. In Best of Both Worlds, they were contemplating killing off Picard and
I heard about that.
I can't imagine.
And see, but that would have been interesting.
Yeah,
that would have been an interesting way to bring Riker as captain, right?
Yeah.
But to that was my first impression when I heard her say those lines, and I'm going, I gotta see this through because I need to know what's happening. I remember being in a different mental state on the characters, also just different opinions on the characters, and sort of now I can say, oh, I'm looking back and I'm going, oh, I understand something differently here.
Okay, that's fair enough. It is certainly, I think, a bit more complex, and again, we'll get into it when we start discussing the writing properly. But yeah, I mean, I can remember the first time I saw this because I wasn't really a Trekkie when they were first airing, unlike you, Rick. And so I didn't come to them until long after Next Gen was finished, and it was when Sky were repeating Next Gen. I've said this before, every day at like 5 p.m. During the weekdays. So I was watching it like all the way through basically then. Bizarrely, I think I came to it in the middle of season 5, but at that point I'd started getting really into Star Trek, so it was kind of what hooked me was Next Gen. And so when I came to this, even as somebody who was younger and who used to find kind of talky things a bit more boring and, was waiting for the action, I remember just thinking how incredible that second part is and just how amazingly written and fantastically acted it is by David Warner and Patrick Stewart. And just it affected me really like powerfully, and I just thought, like everybody else in the world, as we'll see when I get to the audience response thing, I just thought just incredible stuff. I briefly did meet David Warner and got a photo with him. Didn't really have a chance to talk, but I wish I had a chance to say how bloody much I love this performance and what it was incredible. When I did meet him, I made sure that I was wearing my USS Enterprise schematic T-shirt because I was like, I know you've done lots of other things, but it'll always be Star Trek for me, the 2 movies, and especially the Culber-Trek thing. So, I was very pleased to have at least had a picture with him that I can point to. So, but I mean, just really, really incredible, powerful stuff, as we'll get into. So, so if you guys are happy, then I'm going to move on to the writing and the plot. And once again, I have some things to start us off with factually. Hopefully, it'll not be too dull. So the writer of this episode, Frank Abate-Marco, consulted with resources compiled by Amnesty International on the methods, psychology, and the survivors of torture. I think it kind of shows. Jerry Taylor did a page 1 rewrite on the teleplay for part 2, but Frank Abate-Marco retained the sole writing credit. This all too common TV occurrence upset many of the production staff, with Michael Piller later saying Jerry did a remarkable job and that he is extremely proud of this episode. Amnesty supporter Patrick Stewart was delighted at the first draft, but was concerned when he heard that there would be rewrites. Taylor recalled, Patrick got very concerned because he assumed that meant we were going to back off from the very strong nature of it. He said, I don't want that to happen. I think this hits it head on. I want to do that. I don't want this to become another talky episode where we simply talk about and around something and don't really tell it the way it is. Yeah, fair enough. Key influences on the episode include the 1991 independent film Closet Land, as well as Ro Laren's story that we talked about earlier this season from Ensign Ro about her father being tortured in front of her by the Cardassians. Jerry Taylor noted that some viewers protested about the graphic nature of the torture scenes. They didn't want to see Patrick Stewart or anybody else writhing in pain. They felt that it was excessive, that it went too far, and that it was disturbing to children. I can't disagree. It's certainly very intense for children. I wish there had been a disclaimer. Don't know if I fully agree with that, but what do you guys think? Should there have been some kind of disclaimer or warning with this episode? I can't say it disturbed me, but I was like an early teenager when I first saw it. So what about you, Rick? Do you think it was a bit too intense? Oh, are you still with us, Rick? Are you disappeared?
Sorry, I'd muted myself. No, I don't think at all that it was too extreme. I think the thing is, torture is a very real thing that happens in the world, and I think when depicted, we shouldn't pussyfoot around this because people, we kind of need to promote an understanding because it's very easy to forget that it goes on just because it might not be close to or local to us. That shouldn't let us dismiss it or lack compassion for those who've gone through it. And sometimes we need a bit of a kick up the proverbial rear to understand just how intense. And if that is that we see a graphic media depiction of it, then yeah, that's what it is. That was takes to remind us that this stuff kind of does happen, and we need to be aware of it, and we need to be compassionate to victims.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Nita? What are your thoughts on that?
I agree with Rick, because unfortunately, I mean, listen, we need to be careful how we teach children about certain topics, right? But they need to learn about them. And we cannot minimize wartime torture or any kind of torture. It is what it is. And I think that shielding children from every little thing in this world that's negative tends to be a bad thing. It doesn't yield anything positive. I think that, there's a time for everything. And I think that anyone who just allowed their kids to watch a show without going, let me read a little bit about what this episode is going to be about, that's on you. You should have read because you really should be more involved with what it is you want your child to learn about. But if you're watching sci-fi, you know what sci-fi is about, you know that it's political, you know that it brings a message. And I think that they did it in a way that depicted the torture properly, but it also was done tastefully enough where you can sit with a child and go, this is something that happens, and you can talk about it, and it can begin a discussion with your child, because sometimes topics are difficult to explain to children. Or how do you bring it up? When do you bring it up? And sci-fi opens up those doors so that you can watch an episode and go, let's talk about it. How does this apply to real world? And how do you handle these things? And what do you do? I think that that's important. And I don't think that this TV show was ever intended for small children. That's like people who take little children to comedy shows when you know the comic is kind of raunchy and kind of dirty. Why would you do that and expect the comic to change his routine? You wouldn't, right? Because you've taken that responsibility in bringing that child there. So the same thing goes with TV shows and science fiction. By this episode, you have watched enough of TNG to know what it's about. And in that first episode, you're already getting the feel of what's happening here. So I think the message was clear. I don't think a warning was needed. I think paying attention was needed.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think it's a slight over-exaggeration. As much as I love the late Jerry Taylor, I think she's a great writer and everything, I do think it's an exaggeration, because I don't think at any point that it's gratuitous. I think it actually skirts that line quite well in not overdoing it, because it's not like gross out or designed for just pure shock value, but it is uncomfortable. But I also think it being uncomfortable is the point. That's literally the message that it's trying to get across, is that, imagine how it feels for the person going through it, but this crap does happen. And so open your eyes to it a little bit. Like I said, it doesn't force it to, like horrible horror movie type levels, but it does open your eyes even as a child, which I don't think is a bad thing, to like, these are things that happen in the world, and maybe we should open our eyes to it and not be blind to it and do something about it if we can. And,
Exactly.
I think it's a good lesson to learn. And I mean, I wasn't super young, but I was about 14, 15 when I first saw it. And it was definitely my first experience of what we later kind of came to call gaslighting. This idea of, just trying to claim a different reality than what actually was there, with the whole 4 lights versus 5 thing. And I remember, like I said, this was my education about, like, in torture, it's not even necessarily about getting information or whatever. Sometimes it's just about the power trip of it. Like, Madred literally just wanted to have that power over Picard, which I remember being, wow, that's so powerful, because it doesn't really ultimately make a blind bit of difference whether or not he says there's 5 lights or 4. It's just that Madred wanted to break him because he wanted to be the bigger man, and in his mind, stronger, tougher
Control.
guy.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, this is, again, it was how I learned about this thing, but it was so powerful. And especially, I just remember being I may have cried and been devastated by Picard at the end when he's like, the sad thing is, by the end, I had begun to see 5 lights. And I was like, that says so much in so little, in one sentence. That says so much about what must, go through the heads of people that are experiencing that, and how, horrible things can become real, and you can believe the unbelievable and whatever else. And this false reality can be implanted. And it's just, but it was such a powerful, like I said, simple way of putting it, of just like, I would have said anything, but the point is I'd actually started to see the lie, and I was like,
and one of the things that I wanted to point out quickly, if I may, is that there was a child in the midst of this, a Cardassian child. So it gives you the opposite of what we're saying. We're saying teach your children to be sensitive and to understand the realities of the world. This child is representing what happens when that goes to the opposite extreme of desensitizing and making you an uncaring human being, because she didn't react not once to the torment that this person was going through. It mattered nothing to her, because this was what she was being told was okay. So one extreme and another extreme. Don't overprotect, but don't underprotect either. There's got to be a balance.
It's kind of worse than that, because I think that seems very important, because it also shows us how, how the people that conduct the torture can just dehumanize people. I know it's a very Homo sapien-centric word, but that's the only language we have until we meet aliens. But the way that, like, Madred says to her, like, humans don't think like us, they don't feel like us, they don't deserve the same treatment as us, more or less. And it's kind of like, that is how people talk about like different ethnicities, different religions and stuff in the world. So again, I think it was very important to have that scene of that child there, because children are being taught shit like that, and it's kind of like, it's horrifying, but it's supposed to be. They're supposed to think, oh, what?
It's particularly terrifying because he's also giving her a lesson in being a caring person to her pet. So on the one hand, on the one hand, it's like, be a caring, compassionate guardian parent to this animal. Oh yeah, that guy in the corner, don't worry, he's just a human. They're not like us. They don't really understand like love and care of their children.
That's the point, where they're less than an animal,
and it's just like, how, the mentality that can do that. And the sad thing is, there are people in the world with that mentality who would act like that, who would say, teach their child how to care for a pet, and then turn around and go, yeah, but that guy, those guys, they shouldn't even come over here. They've stolen your jobs and stuff like that. And it's just like, no. But that's almost as uncomfortable to me as the torture scenes, to be quite honest. That should come with it. That should come with a disclaimer, disturbing reflections of our own society right here.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the episode's fault. I think that's current society's fault, unfortunately, though. But,
fair enough. Good point. Society should come with a disclaimer. Big fucking.
Can you imagine society has a disclaimer?
Oh, man.
That would be amazing. I would love to see who gets what.
But to your point, though, Rick, I mean, it's again, I say this all the time, but it's yet another example of how I do not get how you can be a conservative Trek fan. It is such a contradiction in terms. And again, all those idiots that are like, I don't watch Star Trek since it went all woke. It's like, were you just not paying attention? Because seriously, this episode is literally saying, do not dehumanize people and torture them and regard them as lesser than, because it makes you an evil, monstrous jerk of a person.
Yeah.
And I can't see how anybody could be blinded and not see that if they watch an episode like this, Did you think the same, Rick?
Yeah, I mean, it always boggles my mind that you can have you can sit there and enjoy this, but could be so completely oblivious to the message.
Yeah.
So, I mean, at what point do you sort of turn around and go, oh, hang on, this is a bit woke, but you look back at this and think that wasn't?
Yes, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I never understood why people claim that Star Trek is getting woke. Yeah. That was the whole point of sci-fi. Okay, it doesn't matter if it's Star Trek or not. Give me one sci-fi that wasn't ahead of its time. Even even if it's like in the 50s or 60s, you're still gonna see that it's ahead of its time. It may not be as ahead as we are, but it's ahead of its time. It addressed the current issues of what's going on. It always have. We go back all the way to the black and white first Doctor Who, and he's addressing current issues. He just is. And that's what sci-fi does. It takes current issues and it puts it in your face in an entertaining science fiction kind of way, and it gets people thinking. That's woke.
Yeah, it's like I said earlier about The Wire as well. Sometimes it puts it as a fun kind of sci-fi allegory or metaphor. Sometimes, like this episode, it just presents you with it because, I mean, yes, fair enough, it's Cardassian doing the torture, but it could just as easily have been, a different, like I said, a different human from a different country, persecuting somebody of a different nationality or a different religion. I mean, we saw that. I mean, it's horrible, but it's just literally how people thought in World War II about Jewish people. Like, oh, they're less than animals, they're like rats, or we just have to exterminate them. And it's like, it's horrible to think of. Or at least I hope it is if you're watching this episode.
And it educates. Sci-fi educates people. It gives it a history. It gives it. Did you know how many things that I learned about British history watching Doctor Who that I didn't know before? And I'm going, oh, I gotta look that up. That sounds interesting. Is that real or made up? Because it's educating people. If you're paying attention, and nerds pay attention, we know that something else is being taught here. And that's what science fiction is. So anyone who doesn't realize that has not paid attention.
Definitely. And yeah, it is sad, like you say, Rick, that we're coming back around in society to a place where it's kind of, we're othering people again, and we're using it as a way to get for some certain, horrible people to get political power and leverage by like, you've got to be proud of what you are and don't let the other people come over here and take jobs and whatever else. And yeah, episodes like this, I think, become all the more prescient. I mean, not that it hasn't anyway. It's 30 years old now, and I think back of everything we've been through, like the Guantanamo Bay situation and everything that happened. I mean, it's still going on, but it was certainly a lot more in the news well after this episode had aired. And it's kind of scary how it represents the kind of f-ups and mistakes we keep doing, but. Hopefully, like I said, at least some people watch it like us and get the idea out of it of like, oh yeah, this is just not on. It's just not cool, basically. So any last thoughts on this particular plot? Because I know we've got another plot that the episode involves that we probably have a lot to say about. So just throwing it open. Anything else you want to say about the whole Madrid Picard torture situation in the writing?
I mean, I know I'm restating it, but literally Patrick Stewart and David Warner together in a room is incredible.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Yeah. What about you, Nita? Any last thoughts? Or
no, I think that this is one of these episodes that is just beautifully written.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So yeah, the second kind of big plot of the episode would be the whole situation with obviously Jellicoe taking over the Enterprise. We've kind of alluded to it in the BTS and stuff, and him being very different to Picard. I've got to be honest, I think it's slightly triggering for me just because I've had at least one situation, probably more, where I've had just an absolute asshole boss. And I really just, when I see this, like my teeth just are on edge, like, oh, I hated that situation so freaking much. And I really just wanted to, slap them down, not literally, obviously I'm not a violent person, but like verbally. And so I cannot tell you the amount of satisfaction I get out of Riker just literally saying, I think you're a bad captain. To be perfectly honest. But yeah, so that's where I stand on the whole Jellicoe thing. Like I said, I see that he's not, he's not evil. He's not one of the bad admirals or anything like that. But like I said, as somebody who's suffered under a boss where nothing's joyous and everything seems to be on edge and how it's just not the way to lead, frankly, it bugs the crap out of me. Where do you stand on this? Nita, I'm going to have to come to you because I know you have slightly different thoughts.
Okay, when I first saw the episode, I wanted to slap him. Like, really? Like, you're just rude. But here's the thing. He is rude. He is very straightforward to the point of that rudeness. There's no taking that away. There's no mistaking that. He really doesn't listen too much to his crew's opinions. He wants what he wants and he wants it done. But is that necessarily a bad thing during a possible wartime? Did the crew of the Enterprise need the shakeup? I think that they did. I think that in times of possible wartime, it's about following the orders that are given and just let's get it done. And I think that his ideas weren't bad. I think they needed to give them 24 hours at minimum to get it done. I think that he was quick to judge a crew that wasn't necessarily being judged correctly. You're judging them on your timeline when they're trying to tell you this is too hard for us to get done in this time. But it wasn't like he was asking for the impossible either. It could be done. They just need a tiny bit more time. And I think he could have been a little bit more flexible. Yes, absolutely. But here's the thing. They were so accustomed to Picard's way that they kind of needed to be shaken up a little bit and go, not every captain is the same. And you can't be stuck on thinking that all captains are going to be XYZ kind of way, because that's not how humans work. Some captains are harder to deal with than others. Some personalities are more difficult. And as a Starfleet officer, you're going to have to adjust because you're not the captain. You're the ones taking the orders, not giving them. And I think that he shook them a little bit. And I think that he also shook Riker into understanding that sometimes you kind of have to step back and take the orders and get it done. I don't know that he was necessarily a bad captain. I don't think he's a bad captain. I think he's a challenging captain. And he really just kind of dips into the part of people that says, I got to just do what I'm told. And then Picard is more like diplomatic. He's a diplomatic kind of man. He's into that diplomacy. So he wants to hear the feedback of other people. What did Picard do? The first thing he did, he went and he talked to Deanna Troi about his experience. Jellicoe would have never done that. Jellicoe would have sucked it up and kept on marching. He's a different person. Not worse, not bad, just different, right?
I don't know. I think that would have been
I don't know that and I think that wouldn't have been a good idea for him to do that. I think you need to deal with your trauma, right? But I think that they were so accustomed to Picard that they wanted everything to be Picard's way. And unfortunately, you don't get that in this world. That's not how the world works. Sometimes you have a boss you can get along with, and sometimes you don't. But that doesn't mean the job doesn't have to get done. And I think that that's a lesson that needed to be learned. I kind of like that he put Deanna Troi in uniform. I think it commanded respect for her. I think it elevated her character, definitely. And I think that, he is a little bit like Admiral Nichelle, where it's like, okay, I'm here, let's get the work done and let's move on. None of the niceties, none of the get to know you. And he also came in, remember, with an already preconceived idea of the Cardassians and the experience he had. And because he's not like Picard, he isn't going to go talk to anybody about these traumas. He came with them. And he brought that onto the table, that aggression, that preconceived idea of these individuals. We've
kind of already learned that that's a bad idea, though. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you look at the episode, The Wounded, we see what can happen when you don't deal with that, when you have got that prejudice.
Yeah.
I promise.
Absolutely. It's not a good thing, but I think I understand where he's coming from. And I think I see him in that perspective of he's wounded. He's a wounded captain trying to be strong. And I see him differently because I understand that differently today. I don't think he was ever technically a bad captain. I think he was a wounded captain. That's what I'm trying to get to in a very long-winded sentence here. Sorry.
I think he was bad, but I'll give my points. And again, I'll promise I'll let you wade into this argument, Rick, as soon as I've given my counterpoint to Nita.
I'm sorry I took so long.
Okay, no, it's just I don't want it to just be just us arguing, but I do have a few counterpoints. So first of all, I want to push back against this idea that the Enterprise was somehow ill-equipped to deal with if it had gone to a war or if the Cardassians had been aggressive. At this point, it's season 6. They've already defeated the Borg, prevented a Klingon civil war, stopped a Cardassian war at least once already. So the idea that they couldn't somehow manage it, I think, is ludicrous. Picard has already proven he's a fantastic negotiator, frankly, better than Jellicoe, the way he acts. I think his negotiation tactics are dangerous, reckless, and stupid. The idea of keeping the Cardassians waiting and then just storming out of there like you're in a huff, and then this play acting of like, oh, tell him that I was just so unreasonable and you've just calmed me down and everything. Like, that is not, it's just bad faith and it's terrible diplomacy. I absolutely hated all that. And I think one of the best lines of the episode that I did kind of miss on first viewings, though, is when Riker says, oh, he's very sure of himself, and Troy just goes, no, he's not. Because we forget that she has the kind of empathy powers of sensing how he's feeling. And it's like, yeah, because this is just a really frightened, insecure boy who's way out of his depth, like, frankly, and he doesn't know what he's doing. And then just the unforgivableness of like, oh, you should just admit what's happened so that Picard doesn't get killed. And he's like, nah. Like, what? You're just happy to let this guy die for your stupid friggin', diplomacy type crap? Like, no. I can't imagine any other officer doing that for anybody else. And it's just, when that happened, I was like, oh, no, I'm kind of with Riker on this one. I would absolutely be pushing back against this. Like, no, we can't tip our hand and tell them. Like, they already know anyway. This is just games here at this point. So, and yeah, like I said, I've had bosses where you're always on edge and nothing's fun and everything's got to be like, I agree with a certain level of formality. I like seeing Deanna in uniform. I've always thought it was ludicrous. She's wandering around in,
exactly
field dresses and stuff. That kind of thing I can accept. I can get on board with. Even the nerdiness of like putting Data in red. I appreciate little things like that, but I do think having everybody just incredibly on edge at all times is counterproductive. Morale is just it wrecks you. And he's aware of that himself. He even says at one point, I'm putting you in charge of the morale situation. And it's like, what exactly do you want me to do? The atmosphere is tense as heck, and it's your fault. I can't improve that, So this was my thoughts on Jellicoe anyway. Even though, like I said, I recognize he's not evil, but I do think he's ill-equipped for the job. Even though parts of it are just, like you said, a different command style, I grant that. You have to adjust to things, certain things. Pieces, but I do think there were things in there that did make him a really bad captain. What about you, Rick? Then I'll give you a chance to chime in now. You're probably taking a deep breath at this point.
So I have always felt there is a trend amongst the crew of the Enterprise D to not particularly care for outsiders. I'm going to cite Starship Mine and the way they treat Commander Hutchinson. They are jerks to him just because he's not one of their guys. They are. And Riker, who I love Riker 99% of the time, but when he's faced with someone new, he's an ass. And so I kind of, in a way, wanted to really like Jellicoe because I felt that Riker was never going to give him a fair chance. He was never going to give him a fair shake, and actually the guy was just coming in and trying to do his best in a really difficult situation. But the more I watch this, the more I think, who comes in and immediately says, right, let's just change to a 4-shift rotation? But hang on, everyone's like, where's the captain being changed? What's going on? And instead of saying anything, reassuring them and stuff, he says, right, we're going to change your entire working method. And we're going to turn the system upside down with no notice. It's just happening. And I'm like, is that the best way? These guys, like you said, like say, these guys have beaten the Borg, they've faced Romulans, they've stopped a Klingon civil war, and they've managed to do all that on a 3-shift rotation. Do you think you should just come in and immediately change everything that's straight under them? Yes, he thinks there's a big conflict coming, and he wants to be ready. Absolutely get it. But I think also you need to communicate a little better. Well, a lot better, to be honest. I don't think he's giving them. He's not really explaining the severity of the situation to anyone. He's just assuming they know, or just assuming that, look, I'm very serious, so you must know this is very serious. Now do what I say. It's like, no. I imagine he is a good captain when on his own ship, when with the crew that have got used to him. But in the scope of this, to just barge in, change everything, expect everyone to fall into line like they're the same guys on the Cairo that you're used to and are used to you. Absolutely outrageous and unfair. the role of captain demands a certain amount of respect, and he's done nothing to earn that with anyone, because he's literally just barged in and expect them to change. He's made, he could have sat down and said to everyone, here's the situation, here's what we need to do, and are you ready? What do we need to make some changes, and sort of actually got a little bit more. And the fact that Riker comes to him and say, I need to talk to you about this Delta shift thing, because it's going to cause significant problems. He's just like, whatever, get it done. What's the point of having a first officer if when he comes to you with a situation, you're just going to say tough? I want it the way I want it. And I have been also in the situation where I've had bosses who have been very bad. And, to be fair, it's led me down, it's ended up with me in a very, very bad place with my mental health, so, to the point where I had to move on. I had to go to a completely different job, and I'm in and luckily I have a lovely boss now, and I'm a lot happier. But yeah, there's far too much of his attitude in there. Yeah, there are bits I like. I do like the formal naval attitude. I like the captain on the bridge. I like that he got a Trojan uniform. And I like that he can't tell which way around his son's elephant picture.
Yeah,
I like
the biggest issue for me was just the fact that he was kind of brought on as like, oh, there's nobody who's a better negotiator, and I think his negotiation tactics were terrible, to be perfectly honest.
I want to say I didn't disagree completely with Admiral Nache. I don't think that, you're going to hate me. I love me some Riker, but I don't think Riker was the right person to be in command of this particular situation. I think having someone with experience with Cardassians would be better. Was Jellicoe the right choice? That's debatable. However, I think having someone with more diplomatic experience, someone with more of a Picard flair for diplomacy, I think she was right in not putting him in command. That's all I'm saying. Sorry, I love me some Riker.
I get it. I don't necessarily think Riker would have been the perfect choice because he doesn't have that experience with the Cardassians. And much as he's great in a conflict, I think if they'd went to a war situation outright, I would totally trust him in command. Like I said,
absolutely.
He's for crying out loud. But I do think if the idea was that Jellicoe was such a better diplomat, I don't get it. And I don't get why it is that you would. I can't buy that Picard would be the only one with the experience to send on the Keltras mission. Like I would far sooner that you kept Picard on the Enterprise for his negotiations.
Well, there were 3 of them, and two were out of Starfleet. I think one might have been dead, they said. But that's why they sent him, because there was only 3 that could have done that job. And either the other 2 were both out of Starfleet, or one of them was dead and one out of Starfleet.
Yeah.
But they could have recalled one of the other ones.
I mean, when you see what the actual mission entails, it's like only I would have been able to climb up this, clearly fake cliff. Like,
fake cliff, yes. Only Picard can do fake cliff.
I get there was you're limited by your budget and whatever, but I really do not see what they specifically needed Picard to go on that mission for. It could have been anybody.
It raises questions about the intelligence level service with Starfleet, because come on, when you look at it, it's kind of an obvious trap. And Nechayev was like, "Yep, let's send the flagship captain in that, because that I definitely believe this is completely on the level." And what happens? So kind of someone botched that big time.
Completely. It also doesn't gel with kind of post next gen Trek, because like, why wouldn't you send Section 31 or Starfleet Intelligence or any number of these actual, spy outfits that are specifically equipped for this? Instead, you send you said, the captain of the flagship.
Section 31 should have sent a shady guy to meet up with Nechayev and say, "Yeah, don't send anyone that's all nonsense. Don't worry about the data wave emissions. Exactly. They're made up."
Yeah. Anyway, so I don't want to keep us.
But if that happened, it would be a rubbish episode.
Yeah, well, true. I mean, I don't hate the episode or the writing. It's just like I said, I don't love Jellicoe for reasons, and like you, I've had bosses that have had me in very bad mental states, and so
yeah.
I mean, I appreciate the fact that he has moments of great, niceness. He's actually quite pleasant to Riker when he first comes on board, and he has moments of good things, but. It hadn't occurred to me until you started talking, Rick, but then I realized part of it is just that he will not deal with people one-on-one.
No.
the people all the time. It's like he tells Troy, you deal with the morale situation. He tells Riker, I want you leading the battle simulations and stuff. It's like, so what exactly are you doing? You haven't reassured anybody or told anybody why you're doing this. If you lead one of the battle scenes or you kind of have a little meeting that would improve morale, maybe it would make a difference instead of sitting on your ass in the ready room preparing to, annoy the Cardassians with your stupid tactics.
It's telling that he basically gets to the position where he just has Data tail around behind him. So when he says, oh, right, Geordi, your department needs to do this and reassign this and recalibrate this, and he's basically the only person he's then willing to deal with is Data. He'll go, well, that'll take 13 hours and you'll need to devote 48 extra people to it. And it's like, there you go, off you go. So it's like,
because Data doesn't have the regard for human kind of like downtime and stuff. So yeah, I mean, I feel for Geordi because he's Data's friend, but you kind of want to slap him when Data's like, oh, it is physically possible if you work around the
I would have been pissed off at Data. Like, read the room, dummy. No one wants to do this. But it goes to show you, though, that Jellicoe did have an idea that could be done. It just required a whole lot of effort and a whole lot of team and sacrifices that he felt were necessary, not necessarily agreed by others.
I understand, but I do think it's important that you have that scene where Geordi says, look, I'm not frightened of hard work. I'm willing to roll up. I understand difficult times and stuff, but this guy's literally just being unreasonable.
Yeah, he's not giving him the time to achieve it. That's the problem.
Exactly. Yeah, and
that's why I say he wasn't unreasonable with his request. He was unreasonable with his timeline as to when he wanted this request to happen.
Yeah, but like I said, I think he like most of the worst bosses, including the big one that I had an issue with, he just had no clue how to deal with people. And I think that's a big part of being a boss or a manager or a captain is that you have to be able to deal with humans on a one-to-one level. That's part of the job. It's not just about, how efficient you are or whatever else. So
agreed.
Yeah. Anyway, like I said, I don't want to keep us too long, so I'm going to move to the acting next. Again, I have a lot of information here, so I do apologize. But again, if you want to chime in, please do. So David Warner and Patrick Stewart first worked together in a production of Hamlet in 1965. Warner praised Stewart, who was early in his Shakespearean career at the time. Warner has previously appeared, as I'm sure we all know, as different characters in 2 Star Trek films, St. John Talbot in Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, and Chancellor Gorkon in Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. There was a different actor, I didn't know this, initially cast as Gul Madred in Chain of Command, but they dropped out on short notice, and with only a few days before production, Warner had no opportunity to learn his lines. His dialogue was written onto boards for him to read out as he went along, which again, I had no idea, it does not show. He preferred the Madred character to either of his previous Star Trek characters because of the scenes with Stewart, which he called wonderful. Don't disagree. In 2015, The Hollywood Reporter noted this episode's scene where Picard cries out, "There are 4 lights," as one of the top 10 most stunning moments of Next Generation. In 2016, Radio Times rated it the 11th greatest scene in all Star Trek, including films and television. And of course, they praised the contributions of Warner and Stewart. In 2017, Den of Geek ranked David Warner's performance as Gul Madred as the second best guest acting performance on Next Gen. I could not find what the first best was, but make your own mind up, I guess. They elaborate that Warner gives a calm, measured performance which perfectly matches Stewart's slowly crumbling Picard. In June 2019, Screen Rant praised Patrick Stewart's performance, noting the story as a showcase of human spirit against lies and adversity. Patrick Stewart prepared for his torture scene at the hands of the Cardassians by reviewing the aforementioned tapes provided by Amnesty International. It was at Patrick Stewart's own insistence that he performed the beginning of the torture scene naked on a closed set. So he was actually naked, if you're curious.
I didn't need to know that, bro.
There's nobody looking. So, and moving on to the other kind of guest cast, Ronnie Cox greatly enjoyed the role his character played in the 2-parter. He commented, "Just about everything on the ship was between Riker and Jellicoe, and I loved that aspect. Gene Roddenberry didn't like conflict between the characters, so my guy was the first guy to come in and sort of ruffle everybody's feathers. I liked that aspect of him. I also liked that he was a by-the-book guy. I love it when Picard comes back to the Enterprise at the end and Jellicoe says, 'Here's your ship back, just the way you left it, maybe a little better.'" He elaborated, "I never saw him as a villain. He was a bit of a hard ass, but not a villain. I thought he dealt with the Cardassians really well, and I thought he ran the Enterprise really well, though in a completely different style from Picard. He also joked, 'I've done a lot of things in my career, and I've got people in my family who think that's the only thing of any worth I have ever done,' presumably people who have never seen RoboCop. I'm also a trivia answer. I'm one of the few actors other than the show's regulars to have done a captain's log on Next Generation. So yeah.
I think the acting was phenomenal. He was, Jellicoe was convincing in his role. And he made you just, either despise him or like him, but like you really just got entrenched in that acting. And I love Riker's reaction to him. And it was natural, it was real. And when Deanna came in to talk to him and be gentle and try to help him understand what was happening, and he kind of shot her down, her reaction was excellent. I love the passion that Jordy brought in. And it just, everyone did a phenomenal job. The Cardassians were excellent. Even the child actress was so good. Like, I was convinced that little girl would stab you in the dark while you're sleeping. Like, she was scary. She was scary. And she was so impressive. And, let's not take away from that torture scene that Picard was going through. You felt for him. His acting just drew you in. They did a phenomenal job. They really brought those skill sets to the table on these episodes, these two episodes. Mm-hmm.
Definitely. I mean, I would only be reiterating what everybody says, but just go and watch the episodes, especially that second part, because, and especially if you're interested in acting, because I just think it's a masterclass. I think Patrick Stewart, he gets so much great stuff. You genuinely feel his pain during the moments when he is supposed to be in pain. I feel exhausted for him, when you're watching him, and little things like the kind of, eating that horrible, disgusting egg thing and just dealing with it, because he has no choice. It's that or nothing. And even at the end, like when he could have been overacting, but it just really works when he's just screaming, "There are 4 lights." Because as we learn, he's kind of trying to reassert his grip with reality. It's just so powerful. But more importantly, equally importantly, I guess, just incredible performance by David Warner, especially when I learn that he's just reading cue cards that are planted throughout the set, because you get no indication of that. And I think he is so incredible. There's times when he almost whispers. There's times when he has that sinister edge to him that you're just terrified of. There's times when he has almost a charm. And I know a part of it's the writing, but I just think the delivery of all of his things is just, it's incredible. It was such a special thing to watch as a youngster and be like, oh, this is a great actor, doing the absolute top of their game. And it is almost Shakespearean. It's just that powerful. So, and yeah, as you said, Ronnie Cox is a very capable actor. I didn't hate Jellicoe. Even when he was doing bad things, I wanted to like him because, Ronnie Cox has a little bit of a charm to him. And in those moments, it was nice to see it. And I was glad when he came back in Prodigy and he's mellowed and he actually is a decent admiral. It was nice to see him. So, yeah, that was basically my thoughts. Any last thoughts then on the acting before I move us along a little bit?
Oh, I have to definitely say the actress, I don't know her name, that plays Admiral Nochet. She's fantastic. I mean, she makes you want to just kick her in the shin because she is just so direct and cold that she's so convincing of it. She's really good. And you could tell that the character has a softness to her. But she doesn't let you see that. And then she holds it back and you could see it. Like, it's really hard to bring that kind of acting where I'm going to play the tough person, but I want you to see that I'm really soft. I'm just not letting you see that because I'm holding it back. That's complex.
Yeah.
That is complex. That's a natural thing, right? That's complex.
I've always thought she was great, and I've always remembered the actress's name, actually, because it's a really fun name. She's called Natalia Nagulich.
I like that.
Yeah. Ever since I first saw that, when I first saw Next Gen, I was like, ooh, what a fun name.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah. That is a fun name, agreed.
Yeah. Moving on to the directing, I don't have any kind of facts or anything for this except just my own kind of notes and thoughts to chuck in. I like some of the matte paintings in this. Didn't appreciate Worf digging through obvious styrofoam rocks at times. The cave is a very obvious soundstage, but I guess that's not necessarily the director's fault. Loved things like the way that Madred is revealed, this kind of villain reveal. You know, he talks before you actually move the camera around him. Loved during the torture scenes when Madred's pacing around Picard. I'm assuming that was a David Warner choice that the director just went with, and it works incredibly well. But it's got to have been difficult because you can't lock the camera. You've got to kind of follow it around in that 360 way. And the other little bit of kind of slight trivia, because it was supposed to be Quark in the scene of the Ferengi that they go to in part 1, that scene was filmed on the DS9 Replimat set. But as a result, they had to film it incredibly tight so that you can't tell that's where they are. So I did notice during that scene, it's very much enclosed in one corner. Yeah. Didn't particularly love the kind of weird sexual Beverly Crusher part in that scene either, when she randomly just starts, I would be so grateful if this Ferengi came out. Oh, God.
That was weird. That was kind of creepy.
Yeah.
At least it wasn't a candle.
Only Ferengi, do you have any dead relatives? Ooh. Anyway, so any thoughts from you guys on the direction? Anything you wanted to add?
I mean, it was all solidly done. I think, given that, I think a lot of it was just in terms of the torture scenes, they let the two actors really go at it, and I think that's, you don't need to interfere too much.
Yeah.
When you got actors of that caliber running around there, so it's kind of one of those things, like, nothing stood out to me, but then of course I think that's probably the sign of a really a really solid direction, that it's just there, it happens, and nothing, you're not sitting there, I'm not questioning any choices, there's nothing that makes me think, oh, why did they do that? So I would say probably on all, the fact that I haven't got much to say on it is a good sign.
Definitely. Yeah, and I would say the same thing. With TV direction, I think it's sometimes when it doesn't stand out that it's working because the story takes the lead in that way. And I will say, when it comes to VFX production design, the only kind of note that I found was Richard James, the set designer, has said that he was fighting against things like Silence of the Lambs and Closet Land, the movie we mentioned earlier, when trying to make a kind of unique interrogation chamber. And he says that the way he did that was with lighting, which I think really does show up. Obviously not just, the 4 lights obvious, but the way that it kind of looks kind of bleak and dark and shadowy, I think it really does give you the atmosphere immediately for those scenes. So I have to give credit for that as well. And I don't have any notes on music because, as you said, I think it just did the job perfectly. So it was very kind of, it didn't stand out, which has got to be a good thing. So, yeah. Any last thoughts, Nita, from you on any of that stuff?
No, I think, I agree with you guys that they did a beautiful job. And I think that I think they really did a good job in these 2 episodes, bringing them together, but kind of keeping them separate at the same time. I think they did a really good job. Yeah,
for sure. Definitely. Right then, the next thing I'll do, I'm going to move to the audience feedback section, opening our subspace communications.
Incoming transmission.
So as I always do, I put out a kind of post on social media asking for your thoughts on Chain of Command parts 1 and 2. I've quite a bit of feedback, and then I'm also going to end with some kind of general critic thoughts because I think it's interesting on this episode in particular. But I'm going to dive straight in, and first of all, we're going to start with Terry Long at Blue Sky, who says Patrick Stewart should have won an Emmy for this episode. Angelico was a bad captain. Don't believe me? Ask Councillor Troy. Oof. Our good friend John Adams on Instagram, hello John, he's been on several episodes, commented 5 stars, best of the series. Equally on Instagram, Trek Stop Motion commented, I need to rewatch this. Moving over to Facebook, we had some Facebook groups respond from Star Trek VIP Lounge. VIP Nerd Lounge, Andre Grindle specifically has left quite a long message. I remember this episode when it was new. My family and I all watched Next Gen together from the beginning in '87. When the second part was ready to air, I was 12 and generally watching Next Gen on my own. But my mom sat me down when the second part of this was about to air. She explained she was watching this particular one with me as it involved torture. Good parenting, Nita, you see.
There you go.
She explained to me how Patrick Stewart was working with Amnesty International, trying to end the practice of torture of prisoners in the real world. Aside from how well nuanced Stewart and the late, great David Warner's performance was, plus my mom's preamble about the episode subject matter, the second part of this wasn't quite as traumatic an experience as it could have been. Because Next Gen wasn't typically dealing with such graphic ideas, that became mainstream with Discovery, Strange New Worlds, and especially Picard, but in Next Gen's era, not so much. I'm glad I was prepped for this. Fair enough. From the group Northeast Retro Den, or NARD, David Howland says, there are 4 stars. Yeah, thanks, David. Somebody was bound to make that joke. And in actual fact, from Star Trek VIP Lounge, Kevin Gowan makes the exact same joke. So, yeah. From the same group, Barbara Shaffett's Viol Orapello, sorry if I butchered that, says, this episode made me terrified of Cardassians. Fair. Sally Leach Devlin in that group says, this episode was life-changing for me, hard to explain, but Picard's humanity shining through was probably the main thing. David Warner was the perfect choice for a terrifying villain. Captain Jellicoe was brilliant. He had an impossible job and he did it to perfection. He didn't care how much the crew hated him. Get it done was his catchphrase, and he didn't care how he got it done. Fair enough then. From Star Trek TNG fan club, James Haynes says, David Warner opposite Patrick Stewart. It doesn't get much better. And I think the other one is from my personal Facebook page, if I can find it yet. Thomas Labanik, again, he's been on this show. Hi, Tommy. Also says 5 out of 5. Jellicoe, you're not supposed to like, but you respect him. It's crazy to think that what people who are captured have to endure, and the performances are great. David Warner and Patrick Stewart are the obvious standouts. And yeah, as I say, because I thought it was interesting, when it comes to critical audience feedback, this 2-part episode is ranked 10th in Entertainment Weekly's list of top 10 Star Trek Next Generation episodes, 6th in Variety's list, 6th again in Nerdist's 2017 list, and 8th in Screen Rant's 2019 poll. In 2013, Slate ranked Chain of Command one of the 10 best episodes in the Star Trek franchise. In 2014, IO9 rated it the 11th best Star Trek episode. In 2016, the Washington Post ranked it the 5th best, as did Empire, while IGN ranked it 13th. In the same year, CNET noted that Chain of Command was rated one of the top 10 episodes of all Star Trek in an audience-based rating at the 50th anniversary convention. At that time, there were roughly 726 episodes and a dozen films released. In June 2019, Screen Rant noted Chain of Command as the second best episode of all 755 episodes of Star Trek up to that time. And Michael Piller himself has remarked, I can't imagine a better show than Chain of Command Part 2. It had no tricks or whiz-bang stuff, and it was one of the least expensive shows of the season. David Warner was sensational, and Patrick Stewart was even better. I don't think there's been a better show in the history of this series, and certainly there was not a better hour of television on that year. Jerry Taylor agreed, it's not possible that there are 5 better male actors in this town than Patrick Stewart. It's probably his finest performance. He literally threw himself physically and mentally into that. So, yeah, I don't think any of us would hugely disagree with any of the things said there, no?
No, definitely not.
Absolutely no disagreement there.
I think you see the reputation that the audience of this episode has, and again, if you haven't watched it, hopefully it's prompted you to, because it's very, very good. Spoiler alert for our thoughts coming up, which I don't think are going to be hugely negative. But before we get into our conclusion and scoring out of 5 stars, or Starfleet Deltas, or lights, I guess, we'll start by giving our favourite character moment line, as I always like to do when I'm hosting these episodes. So we'll give all 3 at the same time, but I'll come to you first, Rick, again, as the newer guest. So starting with your favourite character in the episodes?
I think it's got to be Picard, because what he goes through in that episode is incredible. But he stands up to it, and I think... Well, actually, so we're going to come on to that. Yeah, Picard, for what he undergoes and what he has to go through in that, and he still comes out at the end. Yeah.
I hope I'm not stealing your favorite moment, but I have to mention, because I haven't yet as well, just the fantastic moment of defiance when he's already had the back and forth about, no, there are 4 lights, there are 5, blah blah blah, and then when Madred's like in the midst of torture and just says, how many lights are there, and Picard responds, what lights? I was like, I love that moment of just absolute cheekiness that he gives him there. So, so what's your favourite moment or scene in the episode then?
It is during the torture, after Madred has gone off on his little nostalgic memory lane wondering about Taskbar egg that he ate as a child. And after he concludes his little story, Picard says, from now on, whenever I look at you, I won't see the big bad Cardassian warrior. I'll see a frightened little child.
Yeah.
And I just thought, after everything he's been put through, for him to turn around and go, I'm not opening up to you. I'm not taking that story and being friends with you. You are a scared little child who is taking out all that childhood frustration on someone for no other reason than to try and make yourself feel better about yourself.
Yeah. And I love when he's actually getting like agonized in the next scene, and he's fighting through the pain, and he just goes, you are 6 years old. You are weak and evil. You cannot hurt me. It's just so powerful, It's
incredible.
Yeah. So favorite line, if I haven't already just stolen that as well.
I think that's literally the line where he says, I'll no longer see you as the big Cardassian warrior, but a frightened child.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. Okay, Nita, over to you. Next favorite character to begin.
I have to say that I agree with Rick. Picard in this episode just outstood the he was just phenomenal. So I'm gonna pick Picard as well. My favorite scene is the very end when he's on the bridge, he gives his orders and he looks at Deanna and Deanna looks at him and he nods and they go into his office and he starts to talk. It just, in a world where therapy is still to this day viewed with such stigma, to see such a powerful captain of a galaxy starship, know that that's what he needs to do in order to be the best version of himself. It really is beautiful. And I love that scene because we should all be like Picard, see ourselves for what we are, individuals who could need a little help sometimes. And when he admits that he would have said 5 lights, that took courage. I love that.
Oh, for sure. And I love that he actually points out he didn't put it in the official report, but he still will confide in his counselor. And it gives Troy something really good to do, which the episode didn't always do. But so, yeah, did you have a favorite line specifically?
I think that conversation was like, I don't know that I can break it down, but just him telling her, I almost said it, I almost did that. I think that was powerful. Yeah. I think it concluded the 2 episodes beautifully because it shows strength and vulnerability.
Yeah, I've always loved that, because it's not just about a question of I would have said anything whatsoever. He says that, I would have said anything to anything, but quite aside from that, I had been so tortured that I'd seen 5 lights. He had screwed my reality up. So I think it was very powerful. So I can't disagree with you on that one. My favorite character.
You better not.
When it comes to favorite character, I have said Jellicoe and Madred are both well performed and compelling to watch. Riker gets to be the voice of the audience, but I still have to go for Picard for his resilience alone. And just very strong and well performed. For my favorite moment, I'm going to cheat slightly and I'm going to pick all of the torture scenes because, again, just a masterclass. And for my favorite lines, I mean, there's obvious ones that I could say, but we've already mentioned that stand out. There are 4 lights. I was seeing 5 lights, etc. But I got far too much cathartic satisfaction from, and I'm going to read the whole thing. Well, now that the ranks are dropped, Captain, I don't like you either. You are arrogant and closed-minded. You need to control everything and everyone. You don't provide an atmosphere of trust, and you don't inspire these people to go out of their way for you. You've got everybody wound up so tight there's no joy in anything. I don't think you're a particularly good captain.
That conversation was deep right there.
I love it. And I just love that Riker got the chance to humble him and be like, I'm not going to order you. You could ask me, will you lead this mission? And he's like, yes. Jellicoe just goes to march out. Oh, you're welcome. Like, he's relishing this, and I would totally be doing the same thing if I was him. So, I think that's it. We've covered all of that then. So all that remains is to give our conclusions and our scores out of 5 stars, as I said, or 5 lights or 5 Starfleet deltas, whatever I end up making. Again, Rick, are you happy for us to start with you for your conclusion and score?
Yep, absolutely. I think I've said all I need to say on it. It's just an absolute masterpiece of an episode. I love it. I think it's fantastic. So I would definitely give it a 5 reassigned captains out of 5.
Perfect. Love it. Absolutely true. And you, Nita, what would you, do you have a conclusion, and what would you give it out of 5 stars?
Oh, I'm giving it a 5, brother. A 5. It was a masterpiece. The way they took it from that first one to the second. It was just great. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Apologies for my little dissertation, but I always like a prepared statement. My conclusion is when the credits rolled at the end of part 2, I actually felt like applauding. I've seen it before, of course, many times, but it still hits. It still feels like you've just witnessed something special, the kind of television where the actors are performing at the absolute top of their art. The Picard and Madred torture scenes get most of the attention, and rightly so. They're outstanding, powerful, unsettling, and brutally effective in making you feel exactly as uncomfortable as you should, given the subject matter. But there's more to this story than just that. The writing has to earn its way to that room, and it really does. Part 1 may feel like legwork, more setup than satisfaction, but that groundwork makes the payoff in Part 2 so completely worth the investment. And credit must go to the other great guest star, Ronnie Cox. He's never less than compelling as Captain Jellicoe, even when you can't stand him. There's a fascinating exploration here of different command styles and a real relatability in that clash that gives the story real texture. The writers also deserve credit for not making Jellicoe a two-dimensional antagonist, while still giving us the satisfaction of seeing him humbled by Riker. There are moments of brilliant direction and overall polish that comes from a show utterly confident in its 6th season, and performances that elevate every single scene. This is 90 minutes of Star Trek, of science fiction, of television at its absolute finest. Where sci-fi not so often dismissed, this would and should have been a multiple award winner. I also give it 5 out of 5. I think not particularly surprising anybody. So not any particularly difficult maths to do here to kind of combine news and share. Yeah, the final score here would clearly be a perfect score of 5 out of 5. And I think thoroughly deserved in this instance because it's so good. For all the reasons.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. You guys happy with that then? Perfect score, pretty
absolutely. Yeah, that's a perfect score.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. And that just about brings our mission to a close. The Cardassians have been stared down, the lights have been counted, and I think it's safe to say there are 4 of them. So a huge thank you to my wonderful crew for this one. First of all, Nita, thank you again for coming back and joining me for the 4th time in many weeks.
Thank you for inviting me.
And did you have anything you wanted to plug or anywhere that people can find you?
Yes, so you can find me in most of social medias, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, under Sci-Fi Queens. And the Sci-Fi Queen podcast next episode will be October 24th at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. We're going to be reviewing a sci-fi horror called Pandorum. Because we got to enter spooky season.
Absolutely. And again, you can hear Nita along with DK, myself, and our guest Josh on the entire Living Dead trilogy. Josh isn't on Night of the Living Dead, but he joins us for Dawn and Day over on the Silver Screen podcast at the minute as well, and lots of other spooky fun stuff up on there. So again, Rick, thanks for coming back aboard after far too long away and sharing your insights and your general Starfleet excellence.
Oh, no, absolute pleasure. I was really happy to come back. Been fantastic fun.
And did you have anywhere people can find you online or any projects you wanted to plug?
So I am on Blue Sky, trekkerick@bsky.social, and I don't have any projects particularly, but as I had forgotten about the Limerick rhyme thing, during the course of this, I did whip one up, though I thought maybe I'll just leave us with this.
Awesome.
Partially also in tribute to the awesome Snap Trek podcast that's sadly no longer with us, but they always used to do limericks and haikus and stuff, which were fantastic. Cool. So for Chain of Command, I have Jellicoe negotiations are an absolute fright, but he bombs the Cardi ships before they can fight. He suddenly took the captain's chair. The Enterprise crew found him really unfair. So they get back Picard before he sees 5 lights.
Nice. Perfect. Love that. Excellent. And thank you for being one of very few people to have joined in on the Limerick fun. I really appreciated that. That was fantastic.
Not at all. I always love that sort of thing.
Awesome. Oh, we're going to have you back on and then maybe you can do another one. So, yeah, awesome. And again,
you're going to be the official Limerick man.
Absolutely, I could always use the help. So, and as we're saying our goodbyes, of course, a massive thank you to you, our loyal listeners. You can find all our links, socials, and sister shows via our link tree, conveniently located in every episode description. Go give it a tap, and you'll find all of our past voyages and cinematic detours. As for what's next, fear not, a new series of hit or miss Star Trek will be warping in next year with an all-new theme and fresh missions to explore. But before that, the Who Trek channel is taking a detour through time and space back into the realm of Doctor Who. Next month, we'll be celebrating the show's 62nd anniversary day with an iconic clash between the Daleks and the 7th Doctor. You won't want to miss it. Rice pudding optional.
Rice pudding optional.
If you know, you know. And,
That was the first Doctor Who I ever watched.
Was it? Oh,
It
wow.
was, yeah.
Good episode as well.
Excellent.
I love me a Dalek.
Looking forward to it. Yeah, brilliant. And until then, of course, stay curious, stay kind, and do always remember, we are Starfleet. Live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper.
You have been listening to the Hit or Miss Star Trek podcast, part of the Hit or Miss Who Trek channel. Hit or Miss Star Trek is hosted by Mike Wilson, scripted, produced, and edited by Mike Wilson, based on an idea by Mike Wilson and Will Templar. Follow us on YouTube, your podcatcher of choice, and our social media. Links to all of these can be found by clicking on the link tree in the episode descriptions. This podcast is a Media Matters original production. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this podcast throughout subspace. We'll be back for another thrilling trek through the stars soon, but for now, hailing frequencies closed.
Try to warp out of here at once, maximum speed.